In Miami Narrative, Ulmer writes that, quote, "The ambition of mi auteur as online civic sphere is to create the conditions favoring a collective or community epiphany," end quote. In Ulmer's My Story project, agents trace the four discourses of family, entertainment, school, and career, which have shaped and informed their discursive and psychological experiences of the world. Ulmer notes that this is a highly personal project, explaining, quote, "Inventors have had to be their own Champollions, discovering how in each case to decipher the Rosetta Stone of their pop cycle, how to translate across the different languages and logics internalized through interpolation to form their cognitive maps, their psychogeography. The memory is a cognitive map locating the maker's position in each of the pop cycle's institutions. A goal of the My Story is, in Nietzsche's phrase, to find that secret point at which the aphorism of thought intersects with the anecdote of life. Such a crossroads exists virtually in every person's biography, marking the border or destiny or identity. Mapping this intersection is one way of providing testimony as a witness in the creation of public policy," end quote. As I read this text, I was both inspired and reminded of an essay from Gloria Anzaldúa, Movimientos de Rebeldía y las Culturas que Traicionan, in which she reminds us of the challenge or possibility in some cultures of being able to enter the community as a woman. She writes, quote, "For a woman of my culture, there used to be only three directions she could turn: to the church as a nun, to the streets as a prostitute, or to the home as a mother. Today, some of us have a fourth choice, entering the world by way of education and career, and becoming self-autonomous persons. A very few of us. As a working-class people, our chief activity is to put food in our mouths," end quote. As someone who finds Ulmer's project to be vitally important as a response to ostensibly objective academic theorizing, I am challenged by Anzaldúa's words. Who has access to the critical tools needed to trace their pop cycle, and who even has access to the four institutions that the pop cycle entails? How might making a My Story become a different process when relationships with those four institutions are inherently violent, exclusionary, or tenuous? What about those individuals and collectives for whom school, for example, entertainment, or careers are impossible, unavailable? What about, for instance, the Haitian men in Miami Virtue? While we hear their voices, do we hear their My Stories? Does everyone's My Story and testimony get heard, and does each one have a voice in the shaping of public policy? Does everyone's My Story matter? I do not ask these questions to reject Ulmer's theory. On the contrary, I am very interested in extending his brilliant project to try to account for the voices that I have just referenced. How might they create My Stories too, and engage in this work of marking the borders of their identities, even while they might be excluded from the institutions that the pop cycle includes? While I am unable to offer an overall solution to this problem, I would like to briefly focus on one group for whom I would like to create a special My Story project. While I share Ulmer's concerns for public and political action, I want to create a different My Story project for women who may lack access to these forums and discussions. In what follows, I want to briefly quote from my personal statement for Clemson, in which I describe my adaptation of Ulmer's work for a therapy context, specifically for women with eating disorders. So I said in my application, I am most interested in the My Story's potential for transforming the embodied experiences of participants, particularly women. I hope to extend Ulmer's project more explicitly to feminist theories by crafting a Guy Stories project that will ask participants to explore the experiences that have shaped them in order to re-envision the narratives they ascribe to about their embodiments. By Guy Stories, I do not imply that only women can participate, but rather I hope to celebrate the excess of identities and experiences that are associated with female reproductive organs, based on Cixous's writing method of l'écriture féminine. On a similar note, I adapt the plural title of Guy Stories to my project following the work of Diane Davis regarding unstable identities and breaking up at totality. Since identities are never coherent and experiences are never clearly defined, the categories of Guy Stories should not be static but fluid and overlapping. Rather than the categories of career, family, entertainment, and community, which Ulmer uses for the My Story, I would craft four new categories: bodies, following Cixous; cyborg identities, following Dana Haraway; performances, following Judith Butler; and borderlands, following Gloria Anzaldúa. Within these four discourses, participants would be asked to complete assignments and make web pages, and would use images, music, videos, and text to personalize their pages and convey what literate text oftentimes cannot: unconscious felts and experiences with their bodies. My hope is that such a project would facilitate a more thorough unraveling of the embodied experiences, plural identities, gendered roles, and networked ideologies that participants hold, and would instigate a shift from a more personal project of discovering embodied conflicts, for example, to a more civic project of changing networks that inform the participants' ontologies. Now, a year after I wrote these words, I would add that there is a small but important difference in my story, the method, and my story, the personal exploration, which aims to know the self, is always already embodied, conflicted, and connected. The My Story shows us that we are always already cyborg, to reference Donna Haraway's term for the woman as machine, as animal, as others. I am still very interested in this project of opening up the My Story process for those who might come to it differently with experiences and goals that are unique to their positionality. But I am challenged to negotiate this call for a public and political project that challenges the problems that be us, even as I focus on trying to create a space in which excluded others might bear witness to their truths. The My Story is vital to this project because it allows for witnessing that is potentially raw, tenuous, and sometimes impossible.